Ladies and gentlemen, kindness is a virtue, but too much of it can be a weakness. We live in a world where being kind is encouraged, yet if we overextend it, people take advantage of us. We sacrifice our time, energy, and even dignity, all in the name of being nice. But when does kindness turn into self-neglect? Kindness is a beautiful trait that connects us as human beings. It fosters love, compassion, and understanding in a world that desperately needs it. When we show kindness, we uplift others, bring comfort to those in distress, and create an environment of positivity. It is an essential part of human interaction, strengthening our relationships and making society more harmonious. However, while kindness is undeniably valuable, there is a fine line between being kind and being excessively kind to the point of self-destruction. Too much kindness can lead to a dangerous habit of prioritizing others at the expense of oneself. When a person is overly kind, they often suppress their own needs and desires to accommodate everyone around them. They sacrifice their time, energy, and personal goals to ensure that others are happy, believing that this will bring them acceptance and love. Unfortunately, this constant self-sacrifice can lead to exhaustion, frustration, and even resentment. Another downside of excessive kindness is that it invites exploitation. People who are always kind and accommodating tend to attract those who seek to take advantage of them. Opportunists recognize when someone is unwilling to say no and use this to their benefit. They manipulate kind-hearted individuals, knowing they will continue to give, even when it is undeserved. Over time, the overly kind person may find themselves trapped in a cycle of giving without receiving anything in return. Moreover, being too kind can make it difficult to establish boundaries. Boundaries are necessary for maintaining self-respect and ensuring that personal needs are met. However, individuals who are overly kind often struggle to say no, fearing they will disappoint others or be seen as selfish. This lack of boundaries leads to stress, burnout, and an inability to focus on personal well-being. Without firm limits, people will continue to take more than what is fair, leaving the kind person feeling depleted and undervalued. Excessive kindness can also result in a loss of identity. When someone constantly prioritizes others, they may forget who they truly are and what they want in life. Their decisions and actions become centered around pleasing others rather than fulfilling their own ambitions. This can lead to feelings of emptiness and dissatisfaction as they realize they have spent their lives catering to everyone except themselves. The longer this continues, the harder it becomes to regain control and rediscover personal aspirations. In many cases, too much kindness can lead to emotional exhaustion. The pressure to always be there for others, to constantly meet their expectations, and to maintain a selfless image can be overwhelming. It creates an emotional burden that weighs heavily on the kind person's mental health. Over time, they may begin to feel unappreciated, drained, and even depressed, realizing that their kindness is often one-sided. Another critical issue is that excessive kindness can prevent people from standing up for themselves. They may tolerate mistreatment, thinking that responding with kindness will eventually change the behavior of those who take advantage of them. However, this is rarely the case. Instead, it reinforces the idea that they are willing to accept unfair treatment. When people do not demand respect, they are less likely to receive it. This leads to a cycle of being undervalued and overlooked, further diminishing their self-worth. Ultimately, kindness should always be balanced with self-respect and self-care. It is essential to help others and be compassionate, but not at the expense of one's own well-being. People must learn to recognize when their kindness is being exploited and when it is necessary to draw a line. True kindness does not mean being a doormat, it means being kind while also valuing oneself. Kindness is meant to be a gift, something we offer to others out of genuine care and compassion. However, when kindness is given without limits, it can quickly turn into a weakness that others exploit. People who constantly go out of their way to help, accommodate, and please everyone around them may not realize that they are opening themselves up to manipulation. Instead of being appreciated for their generosity, they may become a target for those who seek to take advantage of their willingness to give. One of the most common ways overly kind people are taken advantage of is through excessive demands on their time and energy. When someone is always available, always willing to help, and never says no, others start expecting them to be that way all the time. At first, it may seem like an occasional favor, but over time, people begin to take it for granted. What started as small requests gradually becomes an overwhelming burden, and the kind person finds themselves constantly catering to the needs of others, often at their own expense. Financial exploitation is another major consequence of being overly kind. Many people who are too generous with their money or resources end up in situations where others repeatedly ask them for financial help, knowing they won't refuse. Friends, family members, and even acquaintances may take advantage of their giving nature, borrowing money without repaying it, expecting favors without reciprocation, and assuming that the kind person will always provide. This not only leads to financial strain, but also creates an imbalance in relationships where one person is always giving while the other is only taking. In the workplace, overextending kindness can result in being overworked and undervalued. Employees who always agree to take on extra tasks, help their colleagues, and avoid confrontation may find themselves burdened with more responsibilities than they can handle. Supervisors and co-workers may begin to rely on them excessively, assuming that they will always step up when needed. This often leads to increased stress, burnout, and frustration as their hard work is not always recognized or rewarded. Instead of being appreciated, they are simply expected to keep giving more. Toxic relationships thrive on excessive kindness. People who are too kind often struggle to walk away from relationships that are one-sided or emotionally draining. They may continue to give chances to individuals who repeatedly hurt them, hoping that their kindness will eventually change the person. Unfortunately, this rarely happens. Instead, the toxic individual continues to take advantage of their generosity, knowing that there are no real consequences for their actions. This dynamic leaves the overly kind person feeling used, unappreciated, and emotionally exhausted. Another way people take advantage of kindness is through emotional dependency. When someone is always available to listen, comfort, and support others, they may become the emotional dumping ground for those around them. While it is good to be a supportive friend, constantly carrying the emotional burdens of others can be exhausting. Some individuals will consistently bring their problems without making any effort to improve their situation, expecting the kind person to always provide reassurance and guidance. Over time, this can drain the kind individual's emotional energy, leaving them feeling depleted and overwhelmed. Overextending kindness without limits sends the message that one's own needs and well-being are not as important as those of others. When people see that someone never stands up for themselves, they begin to assume that their feelings, time, and boundaries don't matter. This leads to a cycle where the overly kind person continues to give while others continue to take without any sense of balance or fairness. Without setting limits, kindness can become a tool that others use for their own benefit, leaving the giver feeling empty and unappreciated. Saying yes is often seen as a positive trait, a sign of generosity, cooperation, and kindness. People who say yes frequently are perceived as dependable, selfless, and easy to get along with. However, when saying yes becomes a habit that overrides personal needs and limits, it can lead to serious consequences. The desire to please everyone can cause an individual to neglect their own well-being, sacrificing their time, energy, and happiness to accommodate others. One of the first signs of self-neglect caused by saying yes too often is physical and emotional exhaustion. When a person is constantly agreeing to help others, take on extra responsibilities, and fulfill endless requests, they may find themselves drained both mentally and physically. Overcommitting leaves little room for rest and self-care, leading to burnout. The more a person ignores their own needs, the harder it becomes to function at their best, ultimately impacting their health and quality of life. Saying yes too often can also lead to overwhelming stress and anxiety. When people agree to do things they don't actually have time for, they create unnecessary pressure on themselves. They may feel trapped under the weight of their obligations, struggling to keep up with all the demands placed on them. The fear of disappointing others can push them to keep saying yes, even when they are struggling, further increasing their stress levels. Over time, this constant anxiety can negatively affect both their mental and physical health. Another major consequence of always saying yes is the loss of personal time and goals. People who overcommit to others often put their own dreams and aspirations on hold. They spend so much time fulfilling the expectations of others that they have no energy left to pursue their own passions. Days, months, or even years can pass before they realize they have been living according to the desires of others, rather than focusing on their own personal growth and fulfillment. Relationships can also suffer when a person always says yes. While it may seem like saying yes strengthens relationships by making others happy, it can actually have the opposite effect. When someone continuously prioritizes others over themselves, resentment can build. They may feel unappreciated and taken for granted, while those around them come to expect their constant compliance. Instead of mutual respect, the relationship becomes one-sided, where one person gives and the other simply takes. Additionally, always saying yes can lower self-esteem and self-worth. When people feel pressured to agree to everything, they may start to believe that their own needs and opinions don't matter. They become accustomed to putting themselves last, which reinforces the idea that their feelings and priorities are not important. Over time, this can diminish their confidence, making it even harder for them to stand up for themselves and establish boundaries. Lastly, saying yes too often removes the opportunity to practice assertiveness and self-respect. Learning to say no is essential for maintaining a healthy balance in life. When people are afraid to decline requests, they deny themselves the chance to set limits and protect their well-being. Without the ability to say no, they remain stuck in a cycle of overcommitment and self-neglect, unable to take control of their own time and energy. Selflessness is often praised as a virtue, and caring for others is an important part of maintaining healthy relationships. However, when a person constantly prioritizes others over themselves, it can have a damaging effect on their self-worth. Always putting others first may seem like an act of kindness, but when done excessively, it can lead to feelings of being unimportant, undervalued, and invisible. Over time, the habit of always placing others' needs above one's own can erode self-esteem and create a deep sense of dissatisfaction. One of the biggest dangers of always prioritizing others is the gradual loss of self-identity. When a person dedicates all their energy to making others happy, they often neglect their own passions, interests, and desires. They become so focused on fulfilling the expectations of those around them that they forget to ask themselves what they truly want. As a result, their own personality and aspirations fade into the background, making it difficult for them to recognize their own worth beyond what they do for others. Additionally, people who constantly put others first may begin to associate their value with their ability to serve and please others. Instead of feeling worthy because of who they are, they feel valuable only when they are being useful to someone else. This creates a cycle in which their self-esteem is dependent on external validation rather than internal confidence. If they ever stop giving, they may feel lost or unworthy, as if they no longer have a purpose. This mindset is unhealthy and can prevent them from developing a strong sense of self-worth that is independent of other people's needs. Another issue is that when a person always puts others first, they teach people to expect it. Friends, family, and co-workers start to assume that their needs will always come first and that the kind person will always be available. This can lead to an imbalance in relationships where one person is constantly giving while others take without thinking twice. When kindness is never reciprocated, it reinforces the idea that the overly selfless person's needs do not matter, further lowering their self-esteem. Over time, constantly prioritizing others can also lead to feelings of resentment and frustration. When someone repeatedly sacrifices their own well-being for others and receives little in return, they may begin to feel unappreciated or even used. They might question why no one considers their needs the way they consider others. However, because they have conditioned people to see them as endlessly giving, it can be difficult to change this dynamic without facing resistance. This emotional burden only deepens their sense of low self-worth, making them feel as if they exist only to serve others. Another consequence of always putting others first is that it can prevent a person from forming healthy boundaries. Without boundaries, people become more vulnerable to exploitation and mistreatment. They may tolerate unfair treatment, thinking that enduring discomfort is just part of being a good person. This leads to a dangerous cycle where they continuously accept less than they deserve, reinforcing the idea that their happiness is secondary to everyone else's. Over time, this lack of boundaries makes it even harder for them to recognize their own worth and advocate for themselves. Finally, lowering one's self-worth by always prioritizing others can make it difficult to receive love and kindness in return. When someone is used to giving without expecting anything back, they may struggle to accept help, care, or appreciation from others. They may feel uncomfortable when others try to support them because they have spent so long believing that their role is only to give, not to receive. This can lead to loneliness and emotional exhaustion, as they feel disconnected from genuine, balanced relationships that should be built on mutual care and respect. Toxic people come in many forms: manipulators, constant complainers, users, and those who disrespect boundaries. When a person tolerates these individuals for too long, it begins to take a toll on their emotional and mental well-being. Toxic relationships are exhausting because they are often one-sided, with one person always giving and the other only taking. The more time spent around toxic people, the more energy is drained, leaving little room for personal growth, happiness, and peace of mind. One of the most harmful effects of tolerating toxic people is the emotional exhaustion they cause. Toxic individuals thrive on negativity, drama, and control. Whether through constant criticism, unreasonable demands, or manipulation, they create a toxic environment that leaves others feeling emotionally drained. Dealing with their mood swings and unreasonable expectations forces people to constantly walk on eggshells, which creates anxiety and stress. Over time, this emotional burden can lead to burnout, making it difficult to focus on personal happiness. Toxic relationships also weaken self-confidence. Many toxic individuals use manipulation and guilt to keep others in their lives, making them feel as if they are never doing enough. They might criticize, belittle, or emotionally blackmail others to maintain control. When someone tolerates this kind of treatment, their self-worth begins to erode. They start questioning their own value, wondering if they truly deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. This cycle of self-doubt can make it even harder to walk away from toxic people, trapping them in unhealthy dynamics. Another major consequence of tolerating toxic individuals is the impact on mental health. Constant exposure to negativity, manipulation, and disrespect can lead to anxiety, depression, and even physical symptoms like headaches or fatigue. Toxic people often create unnecessary stress and conflict, leaving others in a constant state of emotional distress. Instead of feeling supported and uplifted, those who tolerate toxicity may find themselves feeling isolated, drained, and emotionally unstable. Toxic people also drain time and energy that could be invested in meaningful relationships. Every minute spent dealing with their negativity is a minute that could be spent with supportive, loving individuals who genuinely care. When someone continues to tolerate toxic behavior, they rob themselves of opportunities to build healthy, fulfilling connections. Instead of being surrounded by people who encourage and inspire, they remain stuck in relationships that only bring frustration and exhaustion. Additionally, allowing toxic people to remain in one's life sets a dangerous precedent. When someone tolerates mistreatment, they send the message that this kind of behavior is acceptable. Toxic individuals will continue their behavior because they face no consequences, while others may also begin to take advantage of the overly patient person. This creates a pattern where toxic behavior is not only tolerated but encouraged, making it even harder to break free from negative relationships. Ultimately, tolerating toxic people does more harm than good. It drains energy, lowers self-esteem, and prevents personal growth. Instead of holding on to toxic relationships out of guilt, fear, or habit, people must learn to prioritize their own well-being. Recognizing and removing toxic influences is essential for maintaining happiness, mental health, and a fulfilling life. Boundaries are an essential part of self-respect and maintaining a healthy, balanced life. They define how we allow others to treat us, how much we are willing to give, and what we will not tolerate. Without boundaries, people may take advantage of our kindness, drain our energy, and disrespect our needs. Establishing and enforcing boundaries is not about being rude or unkind. It is about valuing oneself enough to ensure that personal well-being is not sacrificed for the sake of others. One of the key reasons boundaries are necessary is that they protect mental and emotional health. When people lack boundaries, they often feel overwhelmed, exhausted, and even resentful because they are constantly accommodating others at their own expense. Saying yes to everything and everyone can lead to burnout, anxiety, and emotional distress. By setting clear limits, individuals can safeguard their peace of mind and create space for rest, relaxation, and personal fulfillment. Boundaries also help define self-worth. When someone allows others to cross their limits repeatedly, it sends a message that their needs and feelings are not important. Over time, this can lead to feelings of being undervalued and invisible. However, when a person enforces their boundaries, they communicate to themselves and to others that they deserve respect. This strengthens self-confidence and reinforces a sense of personal value, leading to healthier, more balanced relationships. Another important benefit of setting boundaries is that it improves relationships rather than harming them. Many people fear that enforcing boundaries will push others away, but in reality, healthy boundaries create mutual respect. When expectations and limits are clear, relationships become more honest and stable. People who truly care will respect those boundaries, while those who resist them may have been taking advantage of the lack of limits all along. Without boundaries, toxic individuals are more likely to manipulate, use, or control a person. People who struggle to say no often attract those who seek to exploit their kindness. Whether in friendships, family dynamics, or the workplace, individuals who fail to set boundaries may find themselves being used for their time, resources, and emotional support without receiving the same in return. Establishing boundaries acts as a shield against such exploitation, ensuring that relationships remain fair and respectful. Setting boundaries also teaches others how to treat us. When a person consistently enforces their limits, it becomes clear that their time, energy, and emotions are valuable. This discourages disrespect and encourages others to interact in a way that aligns with those boundaries. People who set firm limits are often treated with more respect and consideration because they make it known that they will not tolerate mistreatment. Ultimately, boundaries are a reflection of self-respect. They show that a person values themselves enough to protect their own well-being rather than constantly prioritizing the needs of others. Enforcing boundaries may be uncomfortable at first, especially for those who are used to always saying yes or avoiding conflict. However, learning to set and maintain boundaries is one of the most powerful ways to cultivate self-respect and lead a more fulfilling, balanced life. Many people struggle with saying no because they fear disappointing others, being perceived as selfish, or damaging relationships. However, the ability to say no without guilt is a powerful sign of self-respect and emotional strength. It means recognizing personal limits, valuing one's own time and well-being, and understanding that it is impossible to please everyone. Saying no is not an act of cruelty or indifference, it is a necessary skill for maintaining balance and self-care in life. One of the biggest reasons saying no is a strength is that it prevents burnout. People who constantly say yes to every request, invitation, or favor often find themselves overcommitted and exhausted. They take on more than they can handle, sacrificing their own needs in the process. This leads to stress, frustration, and even resentment. Learning to say no allows individuals to prioritize their mental and physical health, ensuring they have the energy to focus on what truly matters to them. Saying no also reinforces self-worth. When someone feels guilty for declining requests, it often stems from a belief that their value is tied to how much they do for others. However, true self-worth is not based on external validation. It comes from within. Being able to say no without guilt shows a deep understanding that one's needs, goals, and feelings are just as important as anyone else's. It is a declaration of self-respect and an acknowledgement of personal priorities. Another benefit of saying no is that it establishes stronger and healthier relationships. Many people worry that declining a request will harm their relationships, but in reality, setting boundaries often strengthens them. When individuals clearly communicate their limits, it fosters respect and honesty. True friends, family members, and colleagues will understand and appreciate that a no is not a rejection of them personally, but rather a sign of self-care and responsibility. If someone reacts negatively to a reasonable boundary, it may indicate an imbalance in the relationship that needs to be addressed. Additionally, the ability to say no helps with time management and productivity. When people agree to everything, they spread themselves too thin, making it difficult to focus on their own goals and responsibilities. Every unnecessary commitment takes away time that could be spent on personal growth, rest, or meaningful activities. By saying no to what does not align with their priorities, individuals gain control over their schedule and ensure they are dedicating their energy to what truly matters. Saying no also prevents people from being taken advantage of. Some individuals will continuously push boundaries, expecting more and more from those who struggle to refuse. People who feel guilty about saying no may find themselves in situations where they are constantly giving while receiving little in return. By confidently declining requests when necessary, they send a clear message that their time and generosity cannot be exploited. This protects them from being used and allows them to engage in relationships that are based on mutual respect. Ultimately, saying no without guilt is a skill that takes practice, but it is essential for personal empowerment. It allows individuals to stand up for themselves, prioritize their well-being, and maintain a sense of control over their lives. Learning to say no is not about being unkind, it is about being strong enough to recognize personal limits and refusing to sacrifice one's happiness for the sake of pleasing others. Kindness is one of the most valuable traits a person can possess. It fosters compassion, builds strong relationships, and creates a positive impact on the world. However, when kindness is given without limits, it can sometimes lead to situations where a person is mistreated, disrespected, or taken for granted. True kindness should never require someone to compromise their dignity, self-respect, or personal values. Maintaining kindness while upholding dignity is essential for a balanced and fulfilling life. One of the most common ways kindness is misused when people mistake it for weakness. Those who are overly accommodating or constantly put others' needs before their own may find themselves being treated unfairly. Some individuals will take advantage of kindness, assuming that a kind person will never stand up for themselves or push back against mistreatment. In these cases, being too selfless can lead to being overlooked, disrespected, or even manipulated. Kindness should always be paired with self-respect to prevent being taken advantage of. Another issue arises when kindness leads to accepting mistreatment in relationships. Some people believe that if they are patient, understanding, and forgiving enough, others will eventually ease their negative behavior. They may tolerate disrespect, dishonesty, or emotional manipulation in the hope that their kindness will inspire better treatment. However, true kindness does not mean allowing others to mistreat you. It is possible to be compassionate while also recognizing when a relationship is harmful and walking away when necessary. Kindness should also not come at the cost of self-expression. Some people hold back their true thoughts and feelings because they fear conflict or upsetting others. They suppress their own opinions to maintain harmony, even when doing so makes them feel unheard or undervalued. However, kindness should not require silence. It is possible to be kind while still speaking up, setting boundaries, and advocating for oneself. Being honest and standing firm in one's beliefs does not contradict kindness, it strengthens it by ensuring that respect goes both ways. Furthermore, kindness should never require a person to compromise their values. Some individuals feel pressure to go along with things they disagree with simply because they don't want to disappoint or upset others. They may say yes to requests that make them uncomfortable or participate in situations that go against their morals. However, true kindness is not about pleasing everyone, it is about staying true to oneself while treating others with respect. A kind person should never feel obligated to sacrifice their integrity just to keep the peace. It is also important to recognize that kindness does not mean enduring unfair treatment in the workplace or other professional settings. Some employees are afraid to assert themselves because they don't want to appear difficult or uncooperative. They take on extra work without recognition, tolerate disrespect from colleagues or superiors, and avoid speaking up when treated unfairly. While professionalism and kindness are important, they should never come at the cost of one's self-worth. Maintaining dignity in professional environments is just as crucial as in personal relationships. Ultimately, kindness and dignity must go hand in hand. True kindness is about being compassionate without allowing oneself to be used, disrespected, or silenced. It is possible to be generous and caring while also standing firm in one's values, setting clear boundaries, and demanding respect. A person should never have to choose between being kind and maintaining their dignity. Real kindness exists where both are preserved. Kindness is a powerful quality that fosters positive relationships, encourages empathy, and creates a sense of connection with others. However, when kindness is not balanced with assertiveness, it can lead to being taken for granted, feeling overwhelmed, or even being mistreated. True kindness does not mean constantly sacrificing one's own needs for the sake of others. Instead, A healthy and fulfilling life requires a balance between being kind and standing up for oneself with confidence and clarity. One of the key reasons balancing kindness with assertiveness is important is that it prevents people from being taken advantage of. Many kind individuals struggle to say no because they fear disappointing others or being seen as selfish. This often results in overcommitment, exhaustion, and resentment. When kindness is paired with assertiveness, people learn to set healthy boundaries and decline requests that do not align with their time, energy, or values without feeling guilty. Assertiveness allows individuals to express their thoughts, needs, and opinions clearly while maintaining respect for others. Some people mistake assertiveness for aggression, but they are very different. Aggression disregards the feelings of others, while assertiveness communicates personal needs in a way that is firm yet respectful. When kindness and assertiveness work together, a person can communicate effectively, ensure their voice is heard, and still be compassionate and considerate in their interactions. Another major benefit of balancing kindness with assertiveness is that it strengthens self-respect. When people constantly put others first at their own expense, they may begin to feel undervalued or invisible. Over time, this can damage self-esteem and lead to frustration. However, when a person is able to stand up for themselves while remaining kind, they reinforce their own worth. They acknowledge that their feelings and needs are just as important as those of others, which leads to a greater sense of confidence and self-respect. In addition to improving self-esteem, assertiveness also leads to healthier relationships. When kindness is not balanced with assertiveness, relationships can become one-sided, where one person gives endlessly while the other takes without reciprocation. This can create unhealthy dynamics and resentment. By being assertive, individuals ensure that their relationships are based on mutual respect, open communication, and fairness. People who genuinely care will respect assertive boundaries, while those who do not may reveal their true nature. Balancing kindness with assertiveness also reduces stress and anxiety. People who struggle to assert themselves often feel pressured to meet everyone's expectations, which leads to chronic stress. They may feel anxious about saying no or expressing disagreement, fearing that they will upset others. However, when assertiveness is developed, this anxiety decreases. People feel more in control of their choices, knowing that they can be both kind and firm without feeling guilty or fearful. In professional settings, balancing kindness with assertiveness is especially crucial. Many employees who are naturally kind hesitate to ask for promotions, set boundaries with co-workers, or address conflicts because they do not want to appear difficult. However, being assertive in the workplace ensures fair treatment, prevents exploitation, and promotes career growth. A person who can communicate their value and set boundaries while remaining respectful earns more respect and recognition in their professional life. Ultimately, balancing kindness with assertiveness leads to a healthier and more fulfilling life. It allows individuals to help others and show compassion without feeling overwhelmed or taken for granted. It reinforces self-worth, strengthens relationships, and fosters a greater sense of control over one's own life. Kindness should never mean sacrificing personal well-being, and when combined with assertiveness, it becomes a powerful tool for living with confidence, balance, and self-respect. Self-respect is the foundation of how we allow others to treat us. When a person values themselves, sets clear boundaries, and refuses to accept mistreatment, they naturally command respect from those around them. On the other hand, if someone continuously compromises their dignity to please others, they send the message that their needs and feelings are secondary. True respect from others begins with self-respect. When you show that you value yourself, people are more likely to treat you with the same level of consideration. One of the most important aspects of self-respect is setting and maintaining boundaries. When people fail to establish limits, they often find themselves overwhelmed or taken advantage of. They say yes to things they don't want to do, tolerate behavior that makes them uncomfortable, and sacrifice their own well-being for the sake of others. However, when a person sets firm boundaries and enforces them consistently, they demonstrate that their time, energy, and emotions are valuable. This in turn teaches others to respect those limits. Self-respect also influences the way a person carries themselves. Confidence, body language, and the way one speaks all play a role in how they are perceived. A person who respects themselves stands tall, makes eye contact, and communicates with clarity and assurance. They do not apologize for their existence or downplay their worth. This level of self-assurance naturally commands respect because it signals that they believe in their own value, making others more likely to acknowledge and honor it. Another key factor in earning respect from others is refusing to tolerate mistreatment. When people allow themselves to be disrespected, belittled, or ignored, they unconsciously signal that this behavior is acceptable. If someone continuously forgives or overlooks mistreatment without addressing it, others may take advantage of this leniency. However, when a person respects themselves enough to walk away from toxic relationships, confront unfair treatment, or demand fairness, they show others that they will not accept anything less than what they deserve. Self-respect is also reflected in the decisions a person makes. People who respect themselves make choices that align with their values, goals, and personal well-being. They do not compromise their integrity just to fit in, gain approval, or avoid conflict. Others take notice of this strength and admire individuals who stand firm in their beliefs. When people see that someone has strong principles and refuses to bend under pressure, they naturally develop a greater level of respect for them. Additionally, self-respect prevents the need for external validation. Those who lack self-respect often seek approval from others to feel worthy. They constantly try to prove themselves, fearing rejection or criticism. However, when someone has a strong sense of self-respect, they do not depend on others to determine their value. They trust their own judgment and do what is right for them, regardless of outside opinions. This independence and self-assurance make others respect them even more, because people admire those who are confident in their own worth. Respecting oneself also influences the quality of relationships. People who respect themselves attract healthier, more balanced relationships because they do not settle for less than they deserve. They surround themselves with those who uplift, appreciate, and support them, rather than those who drain their energy. When someone demonstrates self-respect, they naturally filter out people who do not align with their standards, leading to stronger and more fulfilling connections. Ultimately, respect starts from within. When a person values themselves, treats themselves with kindness, and refuses to accept anything less than what they deserve, they create an environment where others have no choice but to respect them too. Self-respect is not about arrogance or superiority. It is about knowing one's worth and refusing to compromise it for anyone. When respect is established internally, it reflects outwardly, shaping how others respond and interact. So, stop being too kind. Be firm. Stand up for yourself, respect yourself first, and watch how the world starts respecting you too. Thank you.